Join Kevin Hart as he dives into the minds of some of the world's funniest comedians. This is Comedy Goldmines with Kevin Hart.
Welcome, world. Welcome to an all-new episode of Comedy Goldmines, where we do what? Scream it, shout it, let me hear it. Get inside the minds of amazing comedians. That's what we do here. And oh my God, today's show will be no different. Why? Well, because I have another amazing comedian. I have another amazing mind. And that's what happens. That's what happens. You stay true to something and it just continues to grow. You stay true to it. You stay consistent. It just keeps getting better. And that's what I feel is happening here. Ladies and gentlemen, the mind that we're jumping in today, the man, the myth, the legend, Patton Oswalt. Oh my God. Patton, long overdue. How are you, sir?
Yes, very long overdue. We are the two men with the busiest schedules, and we basically decided, let's try to schedule a podcast together, which turned into trying to draw a diagonal line on an Etch-a-Sketch. It was so difficult matching the two of us up. It's crazy.
It's a good thing, though. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have it any other way. And I can say this, well worth the wait, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Well worth the wait. How are you?
I'm good. I'm back home for a short window, weirdly enough. I'm actually inside my home, which is a rare occurrence these days.
Why is it rare? Is it rare because you're back on the road again, comedy-wise, or rare because you're back at work again? Give me why. Why is this a rare occasion?
It's a combo. It's the going away on the weekends to do shows, and then when I'm here, a lot of times I'm either in a trailer or a dressing room,
absolutely,
or somewhere in a small hotel outside of town shooting something. So it's been pretty nonstop. It's actually nice to be in my home for once. Very nice.
I will give you your flowers and your just due. Patton, you are one of the most consistent working individuals attached to the craft of comedy that I can say that I know. You have not had a job. You have worked in this business for years on years. Can you give me a number to your run of work in the entertainment business?
Yes. I have been at it. This past July, I passed my 33-year mark.
Holy shit, man.
33 years. Started in July of 1988. 33
years.
Yeah.
33 years. God damn it, man. Doing what you love.
Yeah.
When did you... And this is the question I love to start these podcasts off with, because I feel like there's a defining moment. There's a defining moment in all of our careers and all of our, our roads to success. When we go, oh shit, this is it. This is when it's about to happen. I can tell now that there's another momentum boost coming, and I'm going to reach another level of success.
I think, well, there were two then, if that's what you're asking. The first was, and this is going to sound kind of simple, but my first open mic, it wasn't that my set went well. It was that for the first time, I found my hang. I found the lifestyle I wanted to be in. Even before I went on stage, watching the other comedians sitting and trading jokes back and forth and just kind of creating on the fly, I was like, that's the world I belong in. And these are the hours that I'm most comfortable and feeling my healthiest and my smartest. Because up to that point, I've been working day jobs and different things that were paying okay, but I could not have cared less if that job went away. Comedy, I was like, if this world goes away, I'll be bummed. Even before I get on stage, I want this world. So it was love at first sight, comedy-wise. And then the year that probably around 93, I had moved to San Francisco, and it was that first year, I'm sure you remember this too. It was the first year when you got to the end of the year and realized, oh, wow, I made enough money as a comedian just to do comedy, and that pays for everything. It does not a lot of money. I think I made $11,000, but I was like, the way I was living with 4 roommates and a smashed up car and, buying nothing. I was like, I can just do comedy and that's all I have to do. I just felt like anything after that was gravy. It felt like such a launch for me. Like, okay, this is happening. This is real.
You know what? It's funny that you said it, because there is a moment where you go, wow, my year is okay.
Yes. Wasn't that a weird feeling?
My year is okay. And I know exactly what you're talking about. So when you said there's 2 moments, that moment when you go, I can support myself off of this.
And nothing else.
That's a big moment.
Huge.
Because that's when you kind of have the idea that your career is real.
Yeah. And it's also the first time you can tell people in your life that love you and are concerned for you. It's the first time you can actually tell them, no, it'll be okay. I've got this. This is actually paying, because they're right to be worried about you going into showbiz. That's a very hard business. It's a huge crapshoot. And to be able to tell the other people in your life, everyone calm down. This is working out. And especially, I don't know what year you start. What year did you start?
I started in 98. 1998.
98. That was a great year for stand-up. That was it was really, when I started, not that I want to pull the old man card on you, but 88 was when the comedy boom was dying. I jumped into comedy as it was starting to collapse. Like, it was the worst timing to get into that career.
But why do you say that? Why do you say it was collapsing at the time?
Because there was an oversaturation of comedy clubs. In the early 80s, comedy became this thing. Comedy clubs became it was the night out. It was the thing to go do. And there were a lot of bad comedy clubs because people that didn't really care about comedy could just open it. You could literally put the word stand-up comedy outside and people would wander in and you would sell them drinks. And there were a lot of bad clubs. And then it hit that saturation point and then it all pulled back. And then before I knew it, there were only 2 or 3. When I moved to San Francisco in 92, there were 10 clubs. A year later, there were 3.
So at this time, Patton, who was on the circuit with you? What were the other comics that were coming up with you in this space?
Well, the night that I started in DC, he thinks it was a different night, but I swear it was the same night because I remember this very clearly. Dave Chappelle also did his first set on the same show as me.
Holy shit.
He was 14, I was 19, and he looked like he had been doing it for a million years. He was that good, just going up, this 14-year-old. Oh my God. I just saw the start. I just saw the first set of a massive superstar in the very near future, not the far future. This kid's going to be huge very quickly. So there was him. And then my circle of friends were, because Dave wisely moved to New York shortly after that. I stayed on the East in the DC area and then moved to San Francisco.
Okay.
So my circle with people like Brian Posehn and Blaine Capatch, and then, David Cross, Bob Odenkirk, Janine Garofalo, that whole West Coast alt comedy scene kind of came up. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah, that was going on.
No, what are you talking about? I'm a comedy snob.
Oh yeah, you're a connoisseur. You know
Yes.
all the different years, all the yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the beauty of doing this, because I'm so intrigued while having these conversations. Like there's such a high level of interest. So when you talk about that moment, right? You said something. You said, "Wow, I got to see Dave Chappelle."
Yeah.
I'm not going to switch and make this about Dave, but you said something very crazy. You said at 14, I saw this guy, this future star.
Yeah.
At that time, 19-year-old you, where were you? How did you feel about you in comedy at that time?
I was way more excited to be doing comedy than I was good at doing it. I loved going to the club. I loved watching the other comedians. I was also trying, but it didn't click immediately with me, which now I'm weirdly thankful for, because I've spoken to, I talked to Chappelle about it and he said, yeah, but he had that thing where he went up his first night and just annihilated, and then could not, as he said, couldn't buy a laugh for months afterwards, which I know a lot of comedians that's happened to. Their first set is amazing, and then it takes them a while to recapture that, and that can be a real screw with your mind kind of thing. And I know that Brian Regan and David Cross went through that, where their first set was incredible, and then
Do you think it's because you're trying to catch that same laugh? You're not appreciating the level of laughs that are coming in?
You're not appreciating the level of laughs that are coming in, and you're no longer in the moment. You're in a memory and not a moment anymore. And the moment has always got to be bigger than the memory or the goal. If either you're looking for the future, and there were a lot of comedians back then in the late 80s, unfortunately, that were good, but their whole thing was, you get a clean 5 minutes, you go on the Tonight Show, he calls you to the couch, you get a sitcom, you've made it. And that was the only way they saw to do it. And so they were living in the future, and there were certain people that were living in the past, some past set that was messing with their head. And I, as harsh as it was, I was forced to live in the present of struggling through and figuring out what the hell it was I was doing. So I'm actually thankful for that.
You know what I love? I love that you're familiar with the idea of success back then, right? And
Yes.
you're going to love where I'm about to take this. The idea of success back then is exactly what you just said. Tonight Show.
Yeah.
At the Tonight Show, hey, he calls you to that couch. Oh, my God, the biggest moment ever. After sitting on that couch, you're going to get calls the following morning. We're going to take every meeting in town. After taking those meetings in town, it's sitcom time. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't around at this time. To my listeners, this is not my my class. This is not my comedy class.
Right.
I came well after this way of approaching, success within comedy was being done. But this moment in time worked for so many people because of what was attached to that couch and what was attached to what came from it. Now, you fast forward now, right? Mm-hmm. The festivals are still there, but it's not the same.
No.
Remember the deals would be given, and the deals, it was the same thing.
Yep.
We had so many different breakdowns that would come. Now, Patton, we're looking at stand-up comedy, and we're looking at an amazing change, an amazing change in narrative. There isn't a blueprint to success anymore.
No.
For a stand-up comedian.
Absolutely not. And if anything, you're very lucky that you got to come up in the generation that you come up with, because you came up in the raw years of the internet where there was still such a thing as, let me put it this way. Yes, there are so many more venues that are open up and avenues that are open up. There isn't the, you must do A, B, and C, or you will not make it. You can just, you're the perfect example of, I'm just going to write my own script. I will do this the way that I feel is amusing and entertaining for me. But what's, I think, really hard for the post 2000 comedians, all of which the new generation coming up is so amazing. Like my group and the group before us, there were a chunk of good people, and there was a lot of like, why are you bothering to? Nowadays, if you're out there doing it, you'd better be good and have something amazing to say, or there's too much exposure of what's already good. But the only drawback for that is, and I feel bad for a lot of young comedians coming up. The thing that got taken away was the wilderness years, the years where no one was looking at you, and you were allowed to make mistakes and go, I want to try this persona out. This didn't work, but no one saw it. No one's filming it. No one remembers it. You're allowed to just figure out who you are now. And I see comedians coming up who like post their open mics, or they post everything they do. And I'm like, give yourself years of obscurity. That's so valuable. Let there be some intrigue about your past. It's so much better, You just said the wilderness years. And I gotta highlight that. Let's take a second. Yeah.
Take a second to really punch that. I want people to understand what that means. Again, the wilderness years, what Patton is referring to, is this moment in time as a comedian where you're figuring it the fuck out.
Yes.
You're figuring it the fuck out. And the thing that's taking away from today's time, and I saw it. I went up the other night. I was talking about this on a previous podcast. I was talking to Jim Jeffries, and I was telling Jim. I said, I just went on stage the other night, and then going on stage the other night, I just was looking for the thing again, right? You're just looking for the spark, the energy, the excitement of just talking about something new. But the thing is, there is no moment that's not captured.
Yes,
everything is captured, and you don't have the opportunity to no longer work, right? Because working in our craft is figuring it out. It's stepping on the stage and being okay with the no laugh for a moment, because this stuff may or may not be good. Right now, I'm in the wild. I'm weaving through, I'm hacking through all the weeds before I learn and figure out how I want to cut the grass. I'm just whacking away, and it's all being captured. So in today's time, the thing that was once a tradition or that was once the roadmap to success, I don't feel that it exists within stand-up comedy.
No.
And I feel like right now, the social media push, the viral push is the hopeful grab.
That's a good way to...
I'm pushing this in hopes that somebody will see it, grab onto it, and maybe this is my way. But at the same time, the sketches that certain talent have done and are doing is acting as a magnifying glass to then become a segue to the stage. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. And again, as for that drawback that I'm talking about, which is there's no more wilderness years for comedians, I will take that drawback if it means that voices that normally wouldn't have thrived in that very narrow structure that I came up in now have a chance to get out there. You know, the kind of stuff that Tim Robinson does on I Think You Should Leave wouldn't have gotten footing anywhere in the late 80s or early 90s when I was coming up. But now there are ways for him to get that stuff through. And you see how, same with Tim and Eric, same with, I mean, God, there's so many people right now that would not have gotten through in that structure. And now I'll take the bad with the good if it means that many more good people get through. Absolutely, I'll take that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, I think that there's you just said it, you know, you don't mind, right? Like no matter what, we want to be in the business to where doors are opening up for the new layers and levels of talent.
Because it makes what we do, it makes us better at what we do. There's nothing worse for a comedian than being the funniest person in the room or the only innovator, because then you just freeze up and calcify and you go nowhere. I always want to hang out with people that are funnier than me, that are doing more innovative stuff that keep my mind sparking, rather than I'm the alpha funny guy here. And that's just boring after a while. It's pointless. You don't write anything new.
Do you feel like your creative spark in comedy is amplified today, or do you feel like it's a harder approach?
That's a really good question, because for every time that I am amplified, or every time I'm inspired by something new, there are moments when it really puts into perspective, oh, but my ways of thinking are a little bit limited compared to this other generation and how they approach things. So does my voice even matter? But if anything, what it makes you do is, well, just recommit to your voice, or admit to what you're limited in and make that the joke. There's humor in that, you know, I can only go so far with things. Luckily there's someone else like Bo Burnham's special Inside. I could never pull that off. I could never, ever, or the Carmichael special that Bo Burnham directed, which starts off cold with him just talking to this audience, and then there's not a laugh for a long time. I'm like, I would be too free. But again, I'm glad that there are people that are messing around with a form like that, that you should always have to question what it is you're doing. Not in terms of, should I be doing this, but like, could I make this better? Could I push this further? Nothing's better than watching someone push things way too far to go, oh, you don't need to be as hesitant as you are. Go for it. Go out there, go far, you know?
I love that. Because I think that's the questioning yourself is, I mean, look, it's a gift and a curse, because you can question yourself into so much doubt to where you say, all right, fuck it, I'm not going to do this shit. Or you can do it in a way where you're like, you know what? I'm questioning myself because I want the best of myself. And I love the fact that I keep rising to the occasion and answering the questions for me. I love that I keep finding the answers, and I'm not taking the easy way out by saying I can't find the answers, and that means that this can't be good.
You ever have this happen to you? You said you started in 98, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's that thing. This happened to me. It's happened to a lot of comedians. Whenever a young comedian tells me that this is happening to them, I get excited for them, because it means you're going to be good. But it's a very scary thing that happens where you start, first there's the awkward years, then you start to click and your material starts to work. And then that same material that's worked, you can't deliver it anymore. It doesn't work for a while. And it's because you hit this weird wall. And what I always tell people is, it's because you are evolving faster than your material is evolving at this point. You know, and you have to let that happen for a while. And there was a time, I remember this very clearly, in 1994, from January to May of 1994, I could not buy a laugh on stage. I was so inside my head. I had made a bunch of breakthroughs in terms of making money and also writing material. And then I started getting inside my head in terms of every set has got to kill. I'm the next big thing. This has got to be it's like, no, you've forgotten to have, the main reason you did this was to have fun and have fun with your friends. And I had stopped relaxing, and I got way too precious about everything I did on stage. And it messed me up for a while.
It's funny you say that, because I mean, look, that's your product of you being your enemy, right?
Yes.
You become your enemy. And here's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Here is something that people don't talk about often. As a comedian, when you start to get to the other side and the other side of work that the comedy doors open you up to, right? You fall in love with that side as well. So the same energy and effort that you put in the stand-up, well, you make it to TV or movies or let's just say plays, whatever it is, that requires the same amount of creative energy and passion and love because you want to get better.
Right.
The same way that you wanted to be an amazing comedian on stage, well, you want to be an amazing actor on television. You want to be an amazing actor in movies, like and it needs your time and it needs an amount of dedication. And when you fall in love, you're looking for the next versions of that thing too, right?
Yeah.
So while doing that, some of us do a great job of managing both. Some of us do a great job of doing that. And still, my weekends, no, I'm out.
Yep.
I'm going on. Got to hit the road, comedy clubs. You can maintain it. But then there's some, Patton, there's some that don't. There's some that don't do both. And when they go back to it, it's like getting back on a bike that you haven't rode in a long time, right?
Yes.
It's like getting back on a fucking bike that you have not rode.
Yeah, and you can tell those comedians, and I've had nights like this too, where they've been away from it maybe a little too long, and they are up there with a sense of confidence that maybe in the moment they don't really deserve because their new material isn't that good, and they fall. And I've seen a lot of comedians fall into this trap too. You get so famous doing other things, TV, movies, that the audience is just so excited to see the movie star that you can get away with some kind of crappy material, and they're just excited to see you. And I've seen a couple of comedians, friends of mine, that got really huge where they didn't say it out loud, but you could tell in their face, you're like, that did not deserve the laugh it just got. Like, I'm just working. It's a Thursday night. I'm working out at the Comedy Store. You guys are laughing way too hard at this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, then you see that worry. I'm like, am I never going to have an honest audience again where I can actually,
that's the mind fuck.
Yeah. That is the mind fuck.
That's the mind fuck. Cause now the mind fuck has got you in a place where you're like, shit.
Yeah.
Like, now I got it. Now is this that good? Let me go back to the tank. Let me go back and figure it out, man. I don't know. Let me like now it's like, is this edgy enough? Is this raw? Is this relatable? Am I too like where am I falling? Once you get to that place, this is when it gets tougher. So, I take my hat off to those that are still dedicated to the creative within our craft and are still figuring out the ways to somehow bring new versions of themselves to the stage. Like, and after all, you're talking about 33 fucking years.
33, man.
33 fucking years. That's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, but stand-up comedy to me, and I know, look, we both know them. We've known comedians that got into comedy to get out of comedy. The comedy was to get them to something else so they could get. I do movies and TV so I can keep doing stand-up. I'm not doing comedy to get out of comedy. And I love doing movies and TV. I love that they are so much fun, but I'll never not go out and do stand-up. It's too much fun. And it's the same thing like when I watch people like you on stage, you are so clearly having so much fun up there that it's like there's no way I would ever stop. Why would I stop doing this? I'm going to just keep doing this.
The fear for me is losing that.
That can never go away.
And that's when I know it's time to stop.
But again, there's that fear of what if I remember right before Johnny Carson went off the air, for like the last couple of months, he would walk out and he would get a standing ovation. And then every line he would do in the monologue would just destroy. And you're like, no, part of the fun of Carson's monologues was like half the jokes wouldn't work. And the laughs would come from him making fun of how bad, and you're like, oh, that's never coming back. We're never going to see that little desperation soft shoe that he would do when a joke bombed, which was very real and very present. So there's always that. How do you, but you fill stadiums. How do you chase that honest reaction and keep that going? Do you do workout sets or what do you do?
The goal for me was to make the biggest rooms intimate. That was the goal. How can I make these big rooms intimate?
Right.
How can I get them all locked into where you're listening to everything I'm saying, you're listening to every word, and the laughs are big laughs, but you're following me every step of the way. Well, I can do it with the performance. I can do it with production. I can make it an event, right?
Right.
But to get to the event, you know, you got to put the year and some change in on the ground. I can't just get there. I got to really go to the clubs for like a year minimum.
Yeah.
I gotta go to New York. I gotta figure out my skeleton. I then gotta figure out what comedy clubs I'm gonna tuck away in for 2 weeks at a time.
Yes.
And after tucking away for 2 weeks at a time, say, let me figure out the many theaters that can get this small version of what it is that I want to do, but let me make sure the laughs are bouncing off of these walls correctly. All right, then let me go to the next tier. Let me go to that 5,000, and let me see. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I got to go through a checklist. And now, you know, as I'm like thinking about stand up today and getting ready just to build another set, it's so tough for me now.
It's
so fucking
really
tough.
Yeah. And also because you and I are involved, and I'm sure a lot of people at our level, and I don't want to, that sounds braggy, but it is a true thing where there are certain things that we're involved with that you really can't do a joke about and hope that the audience is going to relate to that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what it's like when you're negotiating with the studio about back end rights. I mean, guys, we've all done that. Like, no one wants to hear that stuff. You know, no one wants to. You know what it's like when you're doing a scene with The Rock and they rig the explosion wrong, and then it blasts his ear out. So he's got to take this. You got to work with this double. I mean, you guys have all worked with doubles, right? And he's in your eye line. You're like, what is good? No, that cannot be what your bits are about.
The fuck are you talking about?
Like,
what are you talking
about? Shut the fuck
Kevin?
up. I don't want to hear
what
your
are you talking about, Kevin? Like, it's the craziest thing is, like, you know, your life changes, you grow, and as you do, you know, your voice does. But there's this weird back and forth that you have where it's like, all right, I gotta show I'm still true to who I am.
Yeah.
Right? I'm still aware. I'm not a dick. I don't want to throw the things that I have in your face. So let me not talk about that. Let me talk about this. Wait, but is this too? It's like that's like right now, it's work because you have to figure out the correct approach. And the correct tone. So that's where I am, like, currently in the craft. But I'm such a student of it that I'm envious and motivated by the youth.
Yes.
That is so fucking strong. That is now coming up behind.
That is also like, they basically, you ever like get jealous of comedians that coming up that were kind of shit magnets where they were very lucky to have weird stuff just happen to them for some reason. You're like, you just keep getting handed crazy material all the time.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
And in a weird way, this new generation that's coming up, they live in a world where you can't not be a shit magnet just by living, because the world is going so crazy.
So much shit is happening.
Yeah, so and they can relate to it in a way much better than we can. And so there's that great, you know, again, it's very exciting, but it's like I'm a little bit removed from being right in the front line of the shitstorm that these kids have to live in. You know, so there's that, which is amazing.
Do you often go out, and are you have you embedded yourself into like the environment of the new? Do you do it from time to time? Like you pop up at a comedy club, you work out, you meet some new guys, you get some just that energy, the hellos, and have some conversations, or does it, you know, is it a lot for you to do?
Well, I mean, it's sometimes it's hard for me to go out on a weeknight only because I'm 52 and if I have to wake up at 6 a.m. the next day, but your daddy needs his 10 hours. I'm not going to be out till 11 o'clock. But also the advantage again to the youth, my God, could we sound older? Is
fucking insane. This is insane.
Yeah.
Listen to us.
But also they can put out their albums whenever they want. They'll put it up on Spotify. They'll put it up on SoundCloud. They'll put it up on their website. So people, younger comedians that I follow on Twitter, they'll suddenly go, I just put an album out. You're like, oh, and you can just go listen to it online. So I'm there's this wealth of new, it's not just even the material, it's this whole different viewpoint of life that we are not connected to, that's available all the time. And to hear that energy is just incredible. I just love it. I love it.
Where are you at now? Where are you at now within balance? 52 years old, married, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you are, like you said, your life is different now.
It is.
So for a guy that's been on the road and been true to this craft for 33 years, what's your balance between family and work? Are you better at spacing the two and managing the two?
Yes.
Or are you following the same trajectory? Give me that.
Yeah,
that answer.
I'm not following the same trajectory, and it took me a while to realize whatever your routine is, or that is going to change with your life's circumstances. I mean, if you look at my early specials, my first special is how I'm never getting married. My second special, I'm married, but we're never having kids. Third special, my wife is pregnant. Like, you should embrace whatever it is you are, and don't be afraid of change. And I also remember there's a quote by Stephen King, which is, your art should be a function of your life. Your life should be way bigger than your art. If your life is just something that you jam into your art, your life, you're going to hit a really big, ugly wall. There has to be stuff outside of it. And if you live your life where your life is bigger than your art, it actually makes your art way better. It feeds your art better because you experience more stuff. And then the stuff you do is way truer and way more, it just clicks with people. So, cause like, oh God, I do that too. You know what I mean?
It's the commitment and conviction that you say things with that you contradict yourself with later in your career, not knowing that it's coming. It's the convict. There's so much conviction. Look, at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck about relationships. Okay. Because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
The beauty of the relationship that I'm in now is that I have found like a new version of myself.
Yes.
And this is what it's about. I love that you said it, because that to me, that's the funniest thing about the growing up. You know, the funniest thing about the growing up is that we put a timeline together of where people can look and go back to what you said. What you said. Well, Patton, you said, I know what I said.
Oh, I know.
I know what the fuck I said.
I'm like, when people do that, like, excuse me, your first album, you're talking about how people that get married and have kids are idiots. And now you're doing all that. I'm like, I'm sorry, do you write letters to Time Magazine and go, I'm reading this issue from 1988. And funny, you say that, I'm sorry, you say George H.W. Bush is president? Excuse me, that you're like, yes, things change. It captured a moment in time. That's not how that is anymore. These people putting like luminol over people's past and go, you're like, guys, that was a snapshot of who I was at the time, both the positive and the negative. There were stupid things that you do, and you look back and go, oh yeah, I didn't know any better. There you go.
What is older Patton? What's the best change in older Patton versus young Patton? What are you most proud of within self that you've accomplished over the years? For you, not business. This isn't business. You as a person. I know as comedians, we go through some shit. We got stories. We got some history. We got baggage. Some dark, some not. So what's the biggest change in you that you stand on today and go, I'm so happy that I'm no longer that guy?
The biggest change in me is that I switched from being a guy when I was in my 20s. My life was very much a function of my art. Nothing came first. It was just that. It was like I didn't even come first, to the cost of my mental and my physical health. I was too ambitious and I wasn't able to wink at my faults. Everything had to be defensive and had to be now. Like my wife and I had this big argument the other day, and as we're arguing, I'm not even arguing. She's just pointing out something that she was upset with me about, and instead I just kind of listened to her for a little bit and go, wow, you know what? I did not see that was a pattern of stuff that I was doing, and I got to change that because that's stupid. Why am I doing that? That doesn't benefit any. Like, there was this weird moment where I didn't make my faults personal. I made them more like this was a mistake I made, but there's someone bigger than those faults that can then change them. And like, getting older is so, and also it's just like when you get older, I remember Dana Gould saying it's great to get older because the stuff that you think matters, you realize it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
You can actually enjoy life even more. You're like, that stuff doesn't, who cares? It doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
Does not matter.
And you don't, but
At
you
all.
don't know that, like you said, until you get older and you realize the things that are important.
Well, that's another thing too. Okay, here's another really big thing I'm proud of in my older age is that I do not get judgmental or impatient with youth, because I have remembered, and also it helps that I'm in therapy every week, but I really remember who I was when I'm in my 20s. And when I see someone in their 20s or 30s that's, acting up or even annoying me, but I'm like, hang on, Patton, you're annoyed because you just met a version of yourself from 1993. And you were lucky enough that you met people that gave you the breathing room and the space and the patience to grow. Now you got to pay that back and give that to these people.
You said therapy. Why did you make the decision to go in therapy, first of all, before I ask this question?
I went through a really severe depression in my late 20s. It was that just sort of, I've kind of broken through as a comedian, but I don't know what the next steps are. And I got this and got this and got this, but then why aren't I totally happy? Like I didn't, because I didn't have the tools yet to go, well, no, your happiness doesn't come from the rewards monetarily or fame-wise from work. It comes from way different stuff. And I remember talking to my dad. I resisted therapy for years. And then I talked to my dad. I was like, I just feel embarrassed having to go into therapy. Like Humphrey Bogart never went into therapy. And then my dad said, yeah, but he smoked a carton of cigarettes a day. So he was in therapy. They were just in the form of cigarettes. So instead of destroying your lungs, go talk to a guy for an hour a week. It'll make things 100% better. Like, okay. Like that kind of mindset. I needed to have that kind of my head kicked to the side a little bit.
Did you ever go through the bout with entertainment where substance played a part in you and your down moments? Did you ever, was it alcohol? Was it drugs? Was there ever a choice to go down the darker roads for you?
There wasn't a choice to go down. It was weird. It wasn't a choice to go down the darker road post performance, but there were times on stage where I would get slightly buzzed thinking this makes me looser and more confident on stage. This was again in the very early aughts. And then I realized very, very quickly, and thank God at that point I got into therapy. I'm like, wait a minute, let's take this out to its conclusion that this ends really badly. So I just stopped doing that. It wasn't worth it. I mean, I still enjoy a drink now and then, but I wasn't like, I was doing that strategic, like, okay, I'm going on in an hour. Okay, I'll have a scotch and ginger ale, let it hit me. And then right before going, I have one more sip and then bam, I'm nice and loose. I'm like, wait a minute, that's just going to keep, and that's no different than guys in the 70s going, I'll do a little bit of bump of Coke here. And and it just leads to the absolute, you have to have confidence in yourself that you don't need you don't need the black feather that Dumbo holds. It was always in you. It has nothing to do with anything external.
Well, you're creating the thing. You're placeboing yourself.
Yeah. Oh my God. You're placeboing yourself. And in a weird way, that's a version of creativity that can hurt you, because creativity has benefited you in so many other ways that you're going, well, this is more creativity. How can it can only benefit me? It's like, sometimes creativity can get you in some bad places.
Absolutely. When you talk about comedy, you talk about your road, your journey from back in the day where comedy was, what you remember. You talked about your group, the people that acted as your crew, your comedy family.
Yes.
I want to know who acts as your comedy heroes. Who does Patton Oswalt look up to? If you could give me 2 to 3 names, who are your people that really stand out in stand-up comedy?
It's weird. You talked about writing new material. I finished my Netflix special last year. I'm working on the next one. And there's nothing worse than you put out the newest special. I followed the Chris Rock's law, which is once you put a record or a special out, you cannot do that material again.
It's dead.
You can't do it. It's gone. So, so starting new is very, very terrifying for me. So an album, I kind of listen to it ritualistically when I finish a special, is an early Richard Pryor album called Are You Serious? And it is a fascinating album because it's when he is making the transition from being kind of a clean Bill Cosby clone. And he was a very successful, very funny, very, well-dressed and everyone likes him, to the darker, more brilliant Richard Pryor that we came to love. And the transition's not going perfectly. It's not terrible, but there are moments when he just hits a wall and it doesn't quite work. And that whole idea of, because it kind of mirrors, not that I got to the same level of genius that he did, but it does mirror when I first started doing comedy, I worked the road on the East Coast. I got very good at doing the road. In other words, very funny, easy, instantly forgettable material. And then when I moved to San Francisco, and that's when I went up in front of people like Greg Proops and Margaret Cho and Brian Posehn, who were all really doing just really innovative stuff. And I'm doing my can't miss road stuff, which ate it in front of all of them. And I'm like, if I want to be in this city with these minds, I've got to trash what it is I do. Richard Pryor, as an example, they basically unrolled Hollywood at his feet. Like, you are our next guy. You are anointed. You can be in these fun little movies and here do an episode of Wild Wild West. And then he was like, he had to make that, I need to reject all this because it's so limited. And that act of, it must have been sheer terror for him to do what he did, to reject all that and kind of burn all his bridges in Vegas, moved to San Francisco, used to go on there. He was kind of not funny for a while. He would go on the radio and was like radical left wing beyond Black Panther stuff. And then he pulled all that experience in to go through that kind of thing. That his life story is insanely heroic. And I hope that someone makes not a movie. I hope someone does one of those limited TV series, because there's no way to put it in 2 hours. The level of stuff he went, it's way too much. And it's a true epic artist being willing to tear everything down and rebuild over and over again. It's incredible.
Well, another thing to think about too is the idea of celebrating a person when they're gone is something that's been, it's especially in today's time. I mean, it's what we do at the highest level. For some reason, it's frowned upon to celebrate people when they're doing the thing that they're doing, right? It's an argument. It's this versus that. It's I like you, I don't. It's so much around it. But when when a person is no longer here, all of a sudden the history and the blinds are opened up. And people go, holy fuck, we had no idea.
None.
And what you find in Pryor, when you're talking about Pryor, is Pryor went through that curve of searching for that identity on stage, because so many people was in his head.
Oh.
So many people was in his fucking head. And the reason why I say this is because as comics, we get in our heads, but the work that other comics are doing gets in our heads as well.
It can't not. We're in comedy because we love comedy. I don't want to not watch other comedians.
Absolutely. You see another comedian and you see another comedian's act, and then you see the things that are happening for that comedian. And then you go to yourself, well, fuck, I got to start doing that. Mm-hmm. You don't say to yourself, but you don't do that.
Right.
You go, no, I got to start doing that because that's how you're getting to the next level. So I got to start doing that. But you don't do that.
Yep.
Don't take off the hat. No, everybody that's been wearing hats are getting seen. It's like, when you hear these young actors or actresses talk about commercials, they're like, yeah, well, I got my hair real crazy because commercials, they love the crazy hair. And it's like, but you don't wear your hair crazy like that. It's a self-discovery in who you are. And I remember going through that phase of what you just talked about, Patton, which is, I was trying to be the comedian's comedian for a moment, because I remember what it felt like for the comedians to say you were funny. And that's the biggest blessing. It's the biggest award possible, right? Like for a younger comedian to be accepted by the older comedians. Like their nod of approval makes you go, holy shit. But then there's also a turn. There's also a turn where success starts to happen, and those nods of approval, those same ones turn to, man, I can't believe that this is, you know what I mean? Like it's a flip to it. Yep. So you find, no matter what, if you don't check in to you, if you don't find the confidence in what you're doing and take pieces from everything, become a sponge. You got to soak all this shit up. All of this shit somehow work for you. Because if everybody else's idea, opinion, word of approval, if it carries that much weight, you're going to get to a place to where you go, who the fuck am I?
You're doomed. You are doomed. And you're right. And you stop being you. You will begin to flicker and dissolve, and you won't be living in the present anymore. You will be living on waiting for the next person's either approval or disapproval. Disapproval will become another form of energy for you. You'll scroll through the comments until you find the one guy to go, this guy sucks. See, I told you, which is in no way to, and then you're not creating anything.
It's so fucking true, man. It's so true. Like, you just brought back a crazy place of memory, because I remember that stage with Keith Robinson, Patrice O'Neal, Colin Quinn, Jim Norton, Rich Voss, Bill Burr, and you know, being amongst those guys and having the opportunity to call those guys my peers. There was a moment in my young career where I was like, I just want them to think I'm funny. And, you know, there was moments where they did, and there was moments where they didn't. But it wasn't until I got to the point where I told them, I was like, I don't give a fuck if you like it or not.
Right, exactly.
I got the confidence to do that I found their respect for me grew even more. When I got to the point where I was like, who gives a fuck? I'm going to say it. I think it's a funny bit. Shut up. It stinks. I remember Patrice would trash me. That bit stinks. Shut up, Patrice. It's not fucking stink. And I would defend it and stay true and not let them beat me out of certain bits or beat me out of my opinion of funny.
Yeah.
That's a major fucking key. You just said that, and you sparked that for me when you were talking about Janine Garofalo and all those people. Like, I know the feeling of you wanted that approval
so badly. And then I fell into the trap where the Largo in the 90s was the place to be for an alternative comedian. And I almost, but then I pulled myself out of it, fell into the trap of just doing rooms like the Largo and just being like, I got to be in front of my audience. And I remember Louis C.K. told me, he's like, you have to make any audience your audience. If you can't be funny unless you're in front of your people, then you're not a comedian. It's this little curated thing. You got to be able, I mean, the truly great comedians, Brian Regan can go anywhere and destroy a room. Dave Chappelle can go anywhere and destroy a room. It doesn't matter. Dave Attell and Brian Regan could go in front of the same audience. Brian Regan could do his completely G-rated act. Dave Attell could do his completely NC-17 rated act and get the same response from that audience because their stuff is so good and they are so who they each are. So that's who you have to eventually become. It has to be, you're right, it has to be outside of, still acknowledge your influences. I loved Patrice. I love Bill Burr. I love Rich Voss, one of the first comedians I ever opened for. I love Rich Voss, but you have to love them, but then go, but here's my stuff. Take it or leave it, you know?
This is such a refreshing conversation because I mean, I feel like this conversation boils down to, we're talking about the confidence. We're talking about the awareness that you need to have, you know, in the game of comedy. And, you know, you're looking at two guys that have been doing it for so long. My guest, if you do not know or don't remember, he told you he's been doing it for 33 years. And we're talking about the journey in that 33 years of staying true to you, but finding that moment to go, I'm going to be okay being this. And there's some moments of insecurity that are going to
oh boy.
There's some moments of doubt that are going to come your way, but it ultimately has to circle back to you and you believing that you've made the right choice to do this thing.
Also, staying true to you involves making some pretty horrendous mistakes.
Yeah.
And doing a lot of really stupid stuff that you then look back at, and you got to look back. You have to own it and wink at it. So if someone listens to my first album and goes, some of the terms you're using, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I didn't know better. I was 27 years old. I was an idiot. I completely own up to it. I mean, I'm better now. I don't know what you want to do. You know, we got to move on. It sucks. I didn't know better. Now I do. But that's like, you have to embrace that, you know?
I think that people are going to love hearing you talk the way that you talk because you're so passionate about what it is that you're doing, and
Thanks, man.
and I love that you're still passionate. I love that you're an example of, you don't lose the fire. You don't lose the love for the laugh. Like you clearly still have that. And you were talking about finding ways to constantly be inspired and motivated, staying around the funny. That's what this does for me.
Yeah.
This does
Really?
that for me. Just hearing people's love for the fucking craft. I love to see it. I love to hear it. I love the stories. I love the journeys.
Do you do this when I go out on the road now? And I luckily I'm friends with a lot of younger comedians that can point me towards voices and people that are coming up that I have open for me, so I can not only showcase these new talents, but selfishly, so I can watch them and go, oh, I never like people. There's a Pink Fox, Paris Sachet, like these people coming up, Irene too, that have life stories and viewpoints, and I'm like, I would never think of things that way. That like, do you do that on your shows? Do you try to have openers that also make you go, okay, I got to work harder?
I have had the same group of guys with me.
Oh wow!
For the last, my successes come with them. Before success, they were there. Like
that's
the
great.
Same little hub. We've all grown together, and what I've done, or what I wanted to do that I can say that we've now done. We put a family together. We put a tight knit group, and this tight knit group were once boys and now we're men. Right?
Yeah.
We're married, we're kids, and what used to be going to the clubs is now meeting on a Sunday and we're cooking out, or taking a drive and we're meeting at breakfast, and then we go to such and such house and we're doing lunch and drink. Like it's we laugh at how we've watched our lives change, but
Right.
I love that we have experiences with the people that we're closest to.
That's also smart, because you got people around you that can call you out on your shit and go, no, I've known you forever.
Absolutely.
Dude, listen to me. That's so valuable.
Absolutely. I think that it's good just to see the ups and downs, that we all have and that we've all been through, but it also acted as a protective coat for me on the road. Like, I have this bubble around me, and I know how everyone acts. I know everybody's good, bad, ugly. So none of us are going to get out of character because we've been around each other for so long. My fear is bringing in new people and you out and people get bit by that monster. That road monster got a strong bite, going out, having a good time's got a strong bite. And you don't want to be with the person that can't handle that bite and ends up doing blah, blah, blah. And that backlash comes back to you. So I can say that this thing that we have had, it's worked. It's worked.
Oh, that's smart then. Yeah, that's really smart.
We haven't done anything wrong. It's worked for me. It's worked for us. And that's my comedy family,
Wow.
Oh my
God, that's so beautiful.
Well, that's mine. Let's talk about you, man, and where people can see you. Patton right now is actually on tour. He's on fucking tour, man. And I love this. It's called Who's Ready to Laugh? And if you want to go see Patton, which you fucking should, cities, dates, they are attached to his tour release. Patton, do you have anywhere where you can direct people?
Just go to PattonOswalt.com. All the tour dates are listed. I'm probably coming to your city. I just did the Kennedy Center in DC. I'll be in North Carolina in 2 weeks. I'll be in the Midwest. I'll be up and down the West Coast. I'm going everywhere.
How does it feel just to be out, be back around people again?
You know what the best thing about being out again? Because I've been stuck inside. We've all been stuck inside. When you go back out on the road and do these theaters, you get reminded, oh, that's right. The internet isn't the world. Twitter isn't the world.
Yeah.
That's a warped view of what you think the world is. And you go out there, most people are pretty calm and chilling, like, oh, hey, how you doing, man? But you would think that, things are on fire, and then there's, pit bulls with laser beams on their heads, and, and there's Nazis everywhere. And then you realize, oh, that footage of that huge riot, they got in the middle of it to make it look bigger than it is. I mean, yes, there's bad stuff going on out there, but for the most part, people seem to be sane, and it's good to like get refreshed that way and go, oh, good. Okay, great.
Well, that's fucking good for you, man. And I can say, Patton, it's so good just to talk to you, man. This is a conversation, once again, that's long overdue, but I believe the good things are well worth the wait. And listen, Patton also has a podcast as well. It's called Did You Get My Text? And here's the beauty of it. He's keeping his household happy because he's doing it with his wife, Meredith. You can't get a better opportunity than to do something with the one that you love. How's it going for you? How are you guys loving the podcast?
It's really fun. I mean, it's probably what you and your wife deal with, which is you text each other all day, even though you're home. And then at the end of the day, we just go, what was this about? Or why did you send me this picture? So it's this great, like, we just catch up with each other and check in. It's a great check-in.
It's good, man. I love the creative behind it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Comedy Gold Mines. God damn it. What do we do here on Comedy Gold Mines? We get inside the minds of amazing comedians. And oh my God, today, what an amazing mind this was. This was the legend, the myth, the man himself, Patton Oswalt. Patton, 33 years is nothing to be frowned upon. Congrats on all your success. You deserve flowers, and you deserve them now. I am familiar with your journey. I'm familiar with the work that you've done. And I just want to say, man, major salute to you. Do not stop. Continue. You're motivating. You're inspiring, not just me, but so many more.
Thank you so much, man. Oh, my God. Dude, I will see you on the road. Well, our buses will pass, I hope.
There you go. Look at that. See? This is a fucking great podcast, Patton. This is now at least you see. You see, like, oh shit, this was good. This was a fucking good thing. You had a good time on Comedy Gold Mines.
Kevin, thank you, man.
All right, Patton.
Comedy Gold Mines is a Sirius XM and LOL audio production. Executive produced by Kevin Hart, Ty Randolph, and Eric Weil. With Tastemakers Media, Emil Garner, and Ian McDonald.